So, hello everyone. You don't know who I am, but maybe you've seen this guy before. That's Niels Lyngsø. He's UI UX engineer at Umbraco, and he's providing excellent user experience to Umbraco content editors since 2019.
And this is Julia, and whoops. And she started with us this January as an intern, together with the start of the UI Library project. And now she's done studying, and luckily we still have her around to carry for this project. Today, we will sneak peek into the not-so-distant future and show you how swift and easy developing user interfaces in Umbraco will be in the future. So to do that, we'll tell you a fictional story about a girl called Emma working on an Umbraco project in the future.
And Emma is a developer in an agency, and she's also creating awesome user experiences for her clients. And in this not so distant future, she's working on a website for a pet adoption charity. This website will host many different types of content, pets to adopt, blog posts with tips and tricks, and products you can buy to support the good cause. A lot of these items are relevant to each other, and they would like to show this related content on as many pages as they can. For example, in the blog post about pet diet, they want to promote their food products.
So, as new content will be created constantly in this website, it can easily become a struggle to keep all this data up to date. So therefore, they need a setup that doesn't require revisiting the existing content to keep relations up to date. So this is where Emma comes into play. She will make sure that all the content can be tagged, also the media, and she will use those tags to gather related items. So luckily for Emma, she can use the tags property editor in Umbraco. The defined tags are stored globally and are shared across any types of content. In this way, we can easily define relationships between items and query them later on. To set up which relations to show on another page, Emma could use the same property editor. But it doesn't provide the most optimal editor experience, and it also enables you to create tags, and we don't want that. We only want to pick tags. So instead, Emma will be creating a solution where the client easily can verify if they picked a good combination of tags. And then we want to instantly display the current results, so she will have an idea about this querying she's done.
And to make this happen, she will develop a custom property editor that takes one or more tags and then displays all the content marked with the chosen tags. Additionally, the results can be used to quickly navigate to a certain item and edit it. If Emma had to do all of that today, she would have to write a lot of front-end code to handle this presentation, but she's working in the not-so-distant future, and that means she has the Umbraco UI library at hand. So in a little bit, we will show you how she could use it to build her custom property editor. But before that, let's zoom out a bit and get a big picture of what the UI library really is.
Yeah. So, the UI library is stage one of a project called Future-Proofing Backoffice. The goal of this project is to get backoffice up to speed again on technology. We want to ensure we don't repeat the previous mistakes that we've done. So in the future backoffice, we will have separated the concerns of this application, so parts of it can evolve independently. The UI library holds all the pieces to build any UI in Umbraco. It's going to be an open source project of pure client-side code, and you can say it's a collection of visual building blocks. So the role of this project is to separate the UI from our business logic and make it look consistent across all the Umbraco projects, and also for external custom solutions.
All the UI components are implemented with the native browser technology, and that makes them framework agnostic. This means they can be used in any project and they don't need to be a part of the back office. It also allows developing the entire external systems that looks and feel like Umbraco without anything else than UI library. All this is done by using Web Component Standard. In this talk, we won't dive deep into technical details, but if you are interested in it, then make sure you won't miss the next talk by Mike Macy. Now let's take a look over Emma's shoulder and see how she can use UI Library to create her custom property editor.
So to give an impression of how it will be to work in the future, we will use the UI Components library in the current back office. Emma has already set up a basic property editor, and as you can see here, it's nothing fancy. It's just an H1 tag, but with this, she is ready to start the development. But before she can start, she needs to figure out what components from the UI library she needs and how she can implement them. So for that, the UI library comes with a special application. It's called Storybook. And with this, we can explore components of the UI library, and at the same time, we can read the documentation of them. Yeah, this is how it looks. In the left side, we have a panel where we can see all the components and the stories of them. Each story shows a different use case, and we can easily navigate around here. Up here in the top, we can switch from the Canvas tab to the Docs tabs. This we can do to get an overview of the attributes, properties, and events that this component can emit or take in. So you can say this is the component's public API. So these properties are used to change the state of the component, and we can try this out in real time in Storybook by using this panel here in the bottom. In this way, we can try to see how the button looks with a different label or how it looks when it's disabled. When we release the first version of the UI library, this Storybook application will also be hosted online. But for now, we're just running it locally.
So let's find out what Emma needs. She needs a tag component. She can look it up here in the sidebar. There it is. It doesn't do much because it's just a tag, and this is how it looks in its most basic form. Here we can see that it comes in different looks and sizes. And if we switch to the Docs tab, we can see the attributes and the properties of the tag. For this component, we can set the look and size. We can also see that it has an unnamed slot. Slots are extension points in which we can insert HTML of our choice. In this case, that would be the content of the tag. Here's a story representing the version Emma will use. It comes with the remove button, and that's the perfect fit for her property editor. When we release the first version of the UI library, it's going to be possible to see the implementation code right in the Storybook, but for now, we have to go directly to the code behind this story. There it is, and all the components have their own custom tags and can be used like any other HTML element. So all that our Emma has to do is just to put this HTML into her property editor. And she will copy the version of the tag with the remove button inside. There it is. Back at our property editor, we can try to insert the tag component. We're going to type the tag. Inside it, we're going to say hello Codegarden. We're going to close it and switch to back office. And let's see if it shows up there. Refresh. And there it is. Hello Codegarden tag. It's going to be more impressive than that.
Okay, so let's try to insert the tag with the close button that we just copied before, because we need this for the property editor. And let's see how that looks in the back office. And yeah, as you can see, it just works. And the reason why it just works is because these UI components are self-contained. You can say they are scoped. You don't need to be afraid that any styling from the back office will interfere with the components, because they can't. So let's look a bit at the code that we just pasted. You can recognize the UI library components by the UUI prefix in their tag name. So actually, what we do now is that we're using 3 different components from the UI library. And this is because we aim to make simple UI components that are open for extensions. So Because it is because of this architecture, it's possible to make more complex components for a particular case by using the components in compositions. So in this example, we had the tag component, and the tag component doesn't know anything about the ability to put a button into it. But we're still able to do it because of the open architecture. So we can configure the components by using attributes, just like we do with native HTML elements. And here we have given a component a different look by setting the look attribute to primary. Again, remember, in this story, we are in the AngularJS context, and we're using web components. These two technologies don't know anything about each other. We're just using native features to implement and communicate between this.
Great. Now Emma has a way to display the tags, but we need to enable content editors to enter these tags somehow. And for that, we will use Umbraco dropdown component along with a native text input, which can be used to filter the options. Let's find the dropdown component in the storybook. And there it is. And we can see that it has a default slot and a dropdown slot. And the sharp eye may also notice that the open-close state is controlled by this property down here and nothing more. So let's take a look at the code behind this story. There are two buttons in the dropdown. One is mapped to the default slot, which is always visible, and the other button is in the slot named dropdown. We can specify the slot by using this attribute. That's the way to tell the children elements where they should be displayed.
So let's try to put this dropdown into our property editor and wire these things together with some AngularJS code. So here is the dropdown, and inside it we added the native text input that we will use for filtering the tags that we can add. And we want the dropdown to open when the text field has focus. So we'll be adding this line of code, and we need to implement a controller as well for us to add some more logic to this property editor. So we want this the dropdown to open when this open dropdown variable is set to true. And the way to do that is by adding the attribute open to it. But in AngularJS, that's not super easy. So instead of doing something like this, we would have to do something like that. But that's just how it is working in AngularJS. So the dropdown component also emits a custom event. It's a native event, and that is fired when it's closed. And we need to listen to this for our AngularJS variable to correspond to the current state. Okay, so for us to see that this actually works, we'll just add a green box here, and then we can go to backoffice to see how it looks. So here it is. When the input has focus, we see the green box. And before we move on, let's just wrap the tag component together with the input so it looks like one. So now it looks like this. So the next thing we'll do is we'll replace the green box with something a bit more useful. So let's start by removing the green box. And then instead, we want to show the available tags. So we can use a component called select option for that. And just for a start, we'll just add 3 instances of that and see how it looks. So here's how it looks. I think it looks good. So let's try to wire this up with some AngularJS logic. So now we'll just run quickly through what Emma needs to do to tie this together, just so you don't get the feeling that something magic is happening behind the scenes. So what she will do is she will have an array to hold the current selected tags. She will have one for the current options available in the dropdown. And then we'll add some functions for adding and removing tags. And we'll also add one for filtering the available tags. So we'll be using, so let's wind this up with the template. And here we'll be using the Angular directive called ngRepeat this directive can be used on any HTML element, and that's why it also works on these web components. We'll be using this to loop over the currently selected tags and display a UUI tag component or element for each of the current selected tags. And we'll also implement the name. And yeah, then let's hook up the input to enable filtering. And we'll just clean this stuff up. And we'll use again the ng repeat directive to loop over the available options inside the dropdown. And we'll put the name in as well. And we will, when we select the tag from the dropdown, the select component fires a custom event, custom DOM event called select, and we'll use this to react on, so we know when we should add a tag. So great. Let's try to see how this works now. Cool. We can actually filter the available options, and when we press enter or click on one of the tags, they are added to our list of current selected tags.
But Emma's property editor is far from done, and for it to be valuable to her clients, she has to present the current result of the query and display this content somehow. So let's jump to the UI library. And in Umbraco, we have two different UI card components for the different types of content. Here we have an overview of those. And the content card is what Emma will certainly use. But she will also need the media card to show the related media items. The media card can handle images, files, and folders. So let's put the content card and see how that looks. That's nothing special for now. And let's wrap the results in the card grid component. It will take care of showing all the cards in a nice and orderly way. Let's try to add the media card to see how it looks like. And there they are together.
Cool.
So let's...
Looking good. Yeah. So let's try to connect this with some real data that's coming from our Angular controller. Again, we'll be using the ng repeat directive and loop through the results array. And if the result is of the type content, then we'll render a content card. And if it's a media item, then we'll render a media card. So let's bind up all the necessary attributes. Relatively simple. And the results, if you are concerned where that comes from, then it comes from this magic Codegarden service that we don't have in the current back office. But just so you know, we're doing some magic here. Okay, so let's see how that looks. And yeah, we see the content and the media items that are tagged with these relations, and then we even hooked it up with the infinite editor service, so we can open up related content and edit it. So, what just happened here? In relatively short time, we actually made a property editor that looks and feels like Umbraco, and we didn't really write any styles. Well, you maybe noticed in some of the slides that there was a CSS file. So just so you don't feel like we cheated too much, let's just show that. As you can see, it's just a few lines of CSS to bind it all together. So thanks to the UI components taking care of displaying our data, we have a much simpler property editor code. And this makes it much easier for us to maintain this property editor in the future. And because we are not relying on any logic coming from the UI components, it's less likely that there will actually be a breaking change that affects this property editor. So now you could easily think that the work on this property editor was done, but Emma's client would really like a different presentation for their products. So to get the right data displayed in this overview, we have to come up with a new component. Sorry. So our UI library doesn't hold a product card component. We don't have that. But we sorry. So we have to develop our own component in order to make this happen. And the two cards we already seen are based on the same base component. We have the content card and the media card, and we can use the same base for our product card.
So before we start coding, let's take a look what this card should do. It should definitely show a product name, and it should also show the price. It would be good to see how the product looks like, so we will show a picture of the product to make it easy to recognize. Let's create a new file containing the code for this component. We will start by defining a class for our product card. And this class will extend the UUI card element class. Under the hood, our base class extends another class called lit element. This is a small library that will allow us to build web components much faster than it would take in vanilla JavaScript implementation. Now we need to define some properties, the name, the price, and the availability. So let's start with the name. We're doing that with this add property decorator that lit provides for us. And the initial value will be an empty string. Now let's add a render method so we can see all that stuff. It will return a template. It will return a template literal in which we are going to write our components template. So let's put some elements there, a span for a name, another for a price, and because this is a template literal, we can put expressions in them with $signs and curly braces. It can be any valid JavaScript code. Let's wrap this up with appropriate HTML, so it will look nice when we use it. We will also add a slot element in the template. It's a placeholder element that lets us put some markup between component tags if there is no slot, then nothing we put there will show up. In case of our card, we will use the slot for product image. So let's stop here for a second and take a look at the styles. You might notice, sorry, I'll go back one. So you might have noticed that we are using a lot of IDs instead of classes, and normally that would be a no-no. But because web components are scoped, and the styles are scoped, and the IDs are scoped, that they won't pollute the rest.
Exactly. Nothing will go in
Nothing,
or out.
nothing goes in, nothing goes out. To finish it, we will paste all the rest, all the necessary styles, and we don't need to focus on them for too long. And with this component ready, Emma can finish her property editor. She just needs to implement the product card component like she did with the content card and the media card.
So let's look at how she did that. We'll just put it in here and put in bind up the name and the price of the product and add an image just like we did with the media card. So let's see that in action. Similar to before, but now we also have a few products. And this is our own custom-made UI component built on top of a component from the UI library. Quite cool, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And
so, yeah, that's actually all from us.
We hope you like it, and see you around.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.